From the Detroit Free Press in the heart of the Motor City, it's Monday, October 19th. Here are today's top stories, presented by Bush's Fresh Food Market. Bush's has over 4,000 Michigan products, including the freshest fruit and vegetables, meat, seafood, and baked goods. Stop by one of Bush's 16 locations for the personal service you expect from your neighborhood grocer.
For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Kerry Jr. II. Last week, a series of court proceedings were held for Governor Whitmer's accused kidnap plotters. Free Press reporter Paul Egan has more details. Paul, thank you again.
Thanks for having me on, Kerry.
Last week, there were two different court proceedings regarding Governor Whitmer's plotters. We'll start with Tuesday. What were those proceedings about, and what did we learn from those proceedings?
On Tuesday, they started what's called a preliminary examination for 5 defendants. This is basically to determine if there's sufficient evidence to send them to trial. The other thing that happened on Tuesday was bond hearings were held for 3 of the 6 defendants. All 3 were denied bond, which means they have to stay in jail while they're awaiting trial. On Friday, they completed the preliminary examination for all 5 defendants. One of the defendants, the accused ringleader, whose name is Adam Fox, he decided to consent to detention. He said, it's okay with me if you leave me locked up, at least for the time being. And they also held one other bond hearing for another gentleman who was denied bond. So you have 5 defendants, all locked up awaiting trial. There are 6 in total. The 6th one is still in Delaware. He's going to be extradited to Michigan. When he gets here, he'll have a bond hearing as well, and I would think he would likely also be denied bond.
The 6 that we're talking about, these are the 6 that were given federal charges.
That's correct. These are all the federal defendants. They're all facing only one charge each. It's the same charge for all of them. It's conspiracy to kidnap. And it's a charge that could potentially bring even a life sentence.
The 7 that were given state charges, were their court proceedings held at all last week?
There are actually 8 defendants now facing state charges. They've had some arraignments in various courts around the state because they're charged in various courts, not all in the same place. There was one hearing held Friday in which the government gave an indication of how much evidence they have, and it's very voluminous, this case against these state defendants. They're facing a range of charges that include like helping with a terrorist act. They're charged, some of them, with gang membership and also possession of a firearm in commission of a felony.
You brought up the 8th and newest charge, the 14th additional defendant in this case now. When did they initially charge him, and what's the background on how he was brought in?
His name is Brian Higgins. He's from Wisconsin. He was with some of the federal defendants, actually, when they did surveillance on the governor's house. We were told in federal court today, he basically at some point said, I'm out of this thing. I don't want to go ahead with it, and I'm going back to Wisconsin. So that's probably why he wasn't federally charged with kidnapping conspiracy, but he is still facing some serious state charges for his role in planning this alleged kidnapping.
So what's next for these defendants?
Things are a little bit out of order than what they normally would be. Normally, we would have actually seen a grand jury hand down indictments against these federal defendants already. Right now, they've been basically charged in a criminal complaint, basically on the word of an FBI agent that was approved by a judge. In the grand jury proceedings, which are secret, citizens will consider some of the government's evidence and then decide whether or not to hand down an indictment against them. On the state side, we would have preliminary hearings still to come, possibly trial. And this applies to the federal case too. It's quite possible, if not likely, some of these defendants will decide to cooperate with the government against some of the other defendants. They could cut a deal where they would plead to a lesser charge, or we could see various charges withdrawn and people testifying against others. That's not unusual. It's also possible, particularly on the state side, that we could still see more charges and more defendants possibly.
Free Press reporter Paul Egan, thank you so much for your information and insight on this as it's developing. I'm looking forward to talking to you more on this.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Here are the latest coronavirus numbers. The state reported over 1,700 new cases of the coronavirus and 23 new deaths Saturday. 15 deaths were uncovered in a review of death certificates. Michigan has a 7-day average of over 1,400 cases and 17 deaths. In total, health officials have reported nearly 145,000 COVID-19 cases and over 7,000 deaths statewide. That's the latest. For more information on COVID-19 in Michigan, visit www.freep.com.
For more stories from the Detroit Free Press, be sure to check out freep.com. That's FREEP.com. If you're a fan and want to support our quality local journalism, subscribe. Go to freep.com/special offer.